On August 11, 2025, in the contested waters of the South China Sea, a Chinese Type 052D destroyer and a China Coast Guard corvette were executing an aggressive maneuver. Their mission? To box in and intimidate a lone Philippine Coast Guard cutter. But during that risky turn, the 052D crossed ahead of the smaller vessel and slammed into it, crumpling the corvette's hull and reportedly killing several crew. This embarrassing own goal, captured on verified footage, revealed a deeper, more dangerous truth about the People's Liberation Army Navy, or plan. Training and coordination remain dangerously weak. The Type 052D is one of China's most advanced warships, a 7,500-ton destroyer packed with 64 vertical launch cells for advanced missiles and a sophisticated phased array radar. The other ship, a converted Type 056 corvette, is a much smaller 1,500-ton vessel. The destroyer's reckless crossing turn made impact unavoidable, a basic seamanship failure any trained navy should have prevented. This isn't just about one bad day at sea. It's a symptom of a much bigger problem. By the Pentagon's 2024 tally, China's Navy fields over 370 ships and submarines, projected to reach nearly 400 by the end of 2025. They now have more ships than the U.S. Navy. China's state-owned shipyards reportedly turn out more steel in a single year than the entire U.S. has since the end of World War II. But here's the catch. Most of that massive fleet remains completely untested in combat. This pattern of reckless behavior has only gotten worse. On October 12th, Chinese Coast Guard ships were again filmed ramming and blasting Philippine vessels with water cannons near Thitu Island. These incidents prove that China's strategy of coercive seamanship combined with poor training can spark a major crisis in an instant. As the former top intelligence director for the U.S. Pacific Fleet, Captain James Fannell, has stated, this isn't just a case of a few rogue ship captains. According to him, this is a fleet-wide directed campaign by China to enforce its will. Months earlier, before that collision shocked the world, the contest had already shifted north into the Taiwan Strait. Here, the confrontation wasn't about steel and water, but about invisible radar beams and secret electronic signatures. On April 23, 2025, the USS William P. Lawrence, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, conducted a publicly confirmed solo transit of the strait. The U.S. 7th Fleet called it a routine, lawful passage, but Beijing's Eastern Theater Command predictably denounced it as a provocation and scrambled naval and air units to shadow the American ship. Tracking data confirmed the Lawrence maintained a steady 19 knots, 60 miles off China's coast. Calm, deliberate, and professional. China scrambled its J-16 fighters armed with their best long-range PL-15 missiles to track and warn the destroyer, but they never closed to an unsafe range and no threatening radar locks were reported. On the surface, the encounter was pure political theater from Beijing, designed to look tough for a domestic audience. Behind the scenes, the Lawrence's electronic warfare suite was silently harvesting data. As the Chinese forces reacted, the U.S. destroyer's passive receivers were quietly capturing every single radar emission from the J-16 fighters and the shadowing Chinese warships, updating the U.S. Navy's highly classified electronic order of battle in real time. Let me tell you, this is a form of coercive intelligence collection. The U.S. uses the unassailable right of innocent passage under international law to force China to turn on its military hardware. When they do, every frequency, every pulse pattern, and every unique electronic signature is recorded. The Lawrence's advanced ANSLQ-32 electronic warfare suite acted like a sponge, soaking up a treasure trove of data. This allows the U.S. to build a perfect map of China's defensive network, to understand its capabilities, and to develop countermeasures to defeat it. Military analyst Brian Clark from the Hudson Institute puts it bluntly. He says that the Chinese military is still struggling to master the complex joint operations needed in a real war, while the American ability to network all its forces together gives it a significant advantage that the PLA cannot yet match. The confidence to send a single destroyer on this mission comes from the fact that it is, in every meaningful way, superior to its Chinese counterpart. The Lawrence displays over 9,000 tons, carries 96 missile cells in its vertical launching system, and is built around the combat-proven Aegis combat system. It is a warship built to fight through the very electronic jamming and GPS denial that the Chinese military trains to impose. If China couldn't outsail one U.S. destroyer, could it outfight an entire carrier strike group? The contest of wills soon moved from quiet intelligence gathering to a direct confrontation of wings and warships. In the open waters of the South China Sea, the USS Nimitz carrier strike group would show Beijing what real, disciplined naval power looks like. At 9:23 in the morning on June 14, 2025, the Aegis cruiser USS Princeton was on patrol when its radar detected a Chinese-type 052D destroyer accelerating from 18 to 30 knots on a direct intercept course. Within minutes, the entire Nimitz carrier strike group linked its sensors together. At 9:35, an E-2D Hawkeye airborne command post, flying high at 25,000 feet, detected multiple J-15 fighters launching from the deck of the Chinese carrier Shandong. Their climb was sluggish, a known weakness of their ski-jump launch system, which limits their fuel and weapons load. Simultaneously, U.S. sonar tracked a Chinese Type 039 submarine 80 nautical miles away. It was so loud, one operator reportedly said it sounded like a freight train. Dr. Andrew Erickson of the Naval War College confirmed that China's submarines are noisy and relatively easy to track, a vulnerability rooted in decades of lagging acoustic stealth. At 9:37, the flight deck of the Nimitz erupted. FA-18E Super Hornets rocketed off its steam catapults every 45 seconds, but they weren't alone. They were joined by EA-18G Growlers, the most advanced electronic attack jets in the world. As the Growlers approached, their ALQ-99 jamming pods unleashed an electronic storm, flooding the Chinese radars with ghost targets. A single flight of 4 American fighters suddenly appeared on Chinese screens as a swarm of 20. Their situational awareness collapsed in seconds. At 9:47, the Chinese destroyer made a dangerously aggressive move, locking its main fire control radar onto the Nimitz for 30 seconds, the electromagnetic equivalent of pointing a loaded gun. The U.S. crews logged every millisecond, but their discipline held. They did not respond in kind, a display of incredible control. Then came the decisive move. A U.S. Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarine, which had been silently shadowing the Chinese fleet for 8 straight days, surfaced just 6 nautical miles from the Shandong. The Chinese lookouts saw its black hull gleam in the daylight, undeniable proof that their entire anti-submarine screen had failed. For over a week, America's deadliest undersea predator had been inside their formation, completely undetected. The man in charge of all U.S. forces in the Pacific, Admiral John Aquilino, explained exactly what a move like this means. He said it sends an unambiguous message that the United States can and will hold our adversary's most valued assets at risk. 90 seconds later, it slipped beneath the waves and vanished. The message was received. The Chinese J-15 fighters, low on fuel, peeled off one by one. By the late afternoon, the Shandong had retreated, broadcasting a face-saving message that it had completed exercises. But everyone knew the truth. China's coordinated attempt at intimidation had been systematically dismantled by American precision, training, and technology. The U.S. didn't fire a shot. It simply reminded the world that experience and discipline win wars long before any missiles have to fly. If a single American submarine could slip through China's entire carrier screen, what does that say about the plan's combat readiness? From the embarrassing collision in the South China Sea to the electronic face-off in the Taiwan Strait, and the total operational collapse in the carrier showdown, the events of 2025 have exposed the same undeniable pattern. China's Navy can build ships faster, but it cannot fight them better. Each encounter has reaffirmed the profound U.S. advantage in operational integration, real-world experience, and electronic warfare dominance. It is undeniable that the plan is now the world's largest navy by the number of ships. But this one-dimensional metric is a poor and misleading indicator of actual combat power. The U.S. Navy retains an overwhelming advantage in almost every meaningful category, from total fleet tonnage and missile capacity to the power of its nuclear submarine and carrier fleets. But the most crucial difference, the one China cannot mass-produce, is operational experience. The U.S. Navy's ability to integrate air, surface, undersea, and electronic warfare is not theory. It is the result of decades of continuous deployments and live operations. That experience cannot be copied, only earned. Naval analyst Brent Sadler summarized it clearly. While China has built the hardware of a navy, it still lacks the software and hardware that define combat readiness. As he put it, you can buy ships, but you can't buy experience. This is the decisive factor that turns fleets into fighting forces. Without the institutional skill and judgment of veteran crews, Chinese warships remain vulnerable when pressure rises. And by that measure, The United States remains unmatched.